I am not an insider. I am not an analysis. I am not even particularly intelligent or perceptive, but based on my rudimentary, even juvenile understanding of this industry, I think it is basically a guarantee that Nintendo is going to raise the price of the Switch 2 in 2026. I don't know if I'd bet money on it, but I might bet some money on it. I think I might. I mean, I am feeling pretty confident about this. Looking back, I think there was at least a chance that they were going to release the Switch 2 at $500 or, regional equivalent. They didn't, but I would not be surprised if it was on the table. Obviously, the world is in kind of chaos right now. There are already a lot of big, disturbing systemic reasons why things are getting more and more expensive. But now on top of that, we have leadership that are seemingly actively trying to make things as unaffordable as possible. So that's cool. So no matter what, the Switch 2 was always going to be more expensive than the Switch was. But then, around the time when they were getting ready to release it, all of the tariff stuff, it didn't seem like any of this was gonna get better anytime soon. And so I think it was at least considered to release the thing at like 500. But the thing is, Nintendo really likes to make money with their hardware. They don't like to sell hardware at a loss or even at cost and, recoup the costs later through software. Maybe it's because they have a history of their consoles doing really well when they do well, so they really want to make money on the hardware itself. But then, of course, they also realize that if something is priced too high, it just will not sell. The 3DS was their wake-up call there. There was a lot of hype for the system. It was coming off the heels of the DS, so they thought, let's charge a crazy amount for it just because we think we can get away with it. And it turned out they could not get away with it. You land a little too far away from that sweet spot, and people are just gonna say no. They're just gonna be like, I'll just wait till it goes down, or maybe I can get a used one later. Like there is a price where you start to see very, very diminishing returns on sales. So the Switch 2 feels expensive, especially considering how much more it is than the original Switch was at launch. But I wouldn't be surprised if, at least from Nintendo's own perspective, this was them cutting it pretty close to their comfort zone, This was them saying, okay, things are real expensive and things are only probably gonna get more expensive, but at least for now, let's get this thing out the door with a semi-reasonable price, encourage early adopters, and if we have to raise the price later, then okay, we'll deal with that then. And I think this little grace period is about to expire because, yeah, things are only getting worse, only more expensive, only more inflation, only weakening yen as far as I'm able to tell. And we're used to the whole tech industry, components shortages thing. We went through it in 2020. Microsoft and Sony were both trying to launch new consoles, and yet it was the pandemic. Nobody could produce enough chips. So that was a big problem. And now it's happening all over again. And it's because of AI. Of course it is. Of course it's because of AI. All of these big companies are dumping hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars into AI infrastructure. They're building data centers. And so now there's an enormous swell, an enormous new need for these components. Right now, RAM, memory, that's the big thing. The big shortage right now is RAM. It's affecting other things too, but RAM's the big one. But the thing about producing hardware components is you can't just we'll just leave the machine on overnight and it'll put more of them together. There's a real delicate and very complex infrastructure behind all of this stuff. You can't just pull more components out of nowhere. Often, if you want to really ramp up production on something, you have to build new production facilities. So right now we're in this situation where, because of the rise of AI and all of these new data centers, we have this enormous need for these components. Some companies are going, you know what? AI is where the money is. They're placing all the orders, so we're just gonna start selling to them pretty much only. So obviously that is a really big hit to the entire industry. But then there's also this idea of like, we can't produce enough, but we also can't dump a bunch of money into improving and increasing the infrastructure so we can ramp up development, production, because we don't know if this AI bubble is just gonna pop, and in a couple of years, we're not gonna need all of these extra facilities producing all of this extra stuff. Creating this infrastructure can be a years-long thing. They've gotta like plan in advance, you know? So right now, there is an enormous strain on these components and, pretty much across the board, and yet there is no solution in sight. There just isn't one. The unprecedented rise of AI and the need for all of this stuff, it's not something that happens every day, and so there really isn't any one way to fix it. And prices on all this stuff are expected to rise really significantly. PCs and gaming hardware and devices of all kinds are going to be impacted by this. And because the margins are so much thinner for lower to medium range hardware, when you sell a cheaper piece of hardware, you're not going to be able to mark it up as much and make as much of a profit per unit. Lower to medium hardware, like that's where the biggest hits are going to be felt the most. And I could be wrong, but I feel like the Switch 2 is pretty comfortably in that middle range, like there are electronics that are significantly cheaper than that, but then you've got like iPhones and people spend, thousands of dollars on really nice smartphones or laptops or whatever. The Switch 2 is kind of at that medium level. With all of the tariffs and all the importing and everything, I already cannot imagine that Nintendo is making a ton of money on each one. So if the cost of manufacturing goes up even a bit, I feel like Nintendo is gonna have to raise that price. I mean, not gonna have to. No one has to do anything, but as a publicly traded company with a lot of really scary shareholders with the fangs and the claws and stuff, and as a company that for some reason has decided we absolutely have to make money on our hardware no matter what, I certainly don't agree with that. I think selling at a slight loss or at cost is perfectly fine. If you're going to be making billions and billions and billions of dollars in software, just get the darn things into people's hands however you need to do it, but whatever. As a company that has decided for some reason they have to make money on their hardware, they're gonna have to raise the price. They are going to raise the price. How much are these shortages going to affect their bottom line? We really don't know. How much are they going to want to raise the price of the Switch? Are we expecting like clean $50 increments? Are they going to raise it to $500? Really don't know. There's almost no point in speculating. And of course, this is an ongoing issue. Need I remind you that Xbox raised its prices like 3 times in 1 year, just over and over again. Every time there's any little bump, anything that happens in the market that affects their margins, raise that price. Just raise it again and again. Who cares? We're not even in the race anymore anyway. But Sony raised their prices as well. So like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say we were lucky to get the Switch 2 at $450. Maybe all of this stuff is overpriced anyway. Like obviously the point is for them to make money, right? But at least on some level, it is possible that we were a little bit lucky that we got a half year, give or take, of a Switch 2 at $450. And as always, I do not work at Nintendo. I do not make money when you purchase their products. But I will say, if you were wanting to buy a Switch 2, you might want to get on it now before the price goes up. And the really depressing thing about all of this is that if they raise the price, that might not be the last time they raise the price. They may have to raise it again later. Who knows? Who knows how this whole situation is gonna shake out? This situation that could impact essentially every corner of the planet and last for just however many years. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. But don't worry. Once all of these AI data centers get built, we won't even need video games anymore. We'll have AI. We can play the AI and eat the AI and drink the AI and hang out with the AI, and the AI is all we'll ever need forever, and everything will be good.